So, good morning, everybody. I'm going to teach Bitcoin and blockchain technology this semester at Politecnico di Milano and next semester at Milano Bicocca University. So let's say that I'm supposed to be the Bitcoin maximalist of the day, but even if Simon told that we used to spit in your face, I don't ever spit on anyone's face. So feel free to talk even later on after my talk, okay? I've been head of blockchain and virtual currency at Intesa San Paolo. I stepped down from that position. I'm still in Intesa San Paolo because I just couldn't stand the hype about blockchain. And so, 18 years down the road, I don't want anybody asking me why I did support a consortium that turned out to be a flop. Okay, so everything started in some way, October last year, when the economists say blockchain, not Bitcoin, will prove revolutionary in banking. Really? Well, I'm not sure about that. But why is such a sentence possible? Because Bitcoin is today, or at least as Mark Andreessen say, Bitcoin was in 2014 like internet in 1994. Weird and scary. So if you remember the mid-90s, corporate wanted to go online, but not on internet. And there was this so-called walled garden model, which was offered by CompuServe, AOL, and to some degree Microsoft MSN, which meant that you had controlled access to web content and services. Well, we know that that was, of course, going to fail with exposed inside. Not because those risks were not real, they were real, but simply, we know that the benefit of going online is much more rewarding than the risk we're taking. Okay, so we might be experiencing a similar moment, especially because everybody promised you some major breaking change for capital market and financial services, but very few can say exactly how or why. I mean, if you feel still uncomfortable about blockchain, don't worry, it's not like you are slow to get it. It's because most of the people trying to explain that to you, they didn't get it either, So this is the point. That's why people keep telling generic stuff, So let's try to say, what is a blockchain? Because Simon was right. Blockchain is something else to different people. Everybody has its own blockchain. But at least there is a blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, which is something very concrete. So what is that? Well, I will spare you the details about the technical explication of an hash pointer linked list of blocks. But what is easy to understand is that it is an append-only sequential data structure, okay? So you can only add data at the end. So data comes into form of block. That's why we have a chain of block. And to change something in the middle of this chain is very problematic because everything else subsequent to that block in the chain needs to be updated, okay? And this is computationally intensive. So this data structure is very poor, I'll tell you. It's very primitive, very inefficient compared to relational database. So you really, really need to have a strong incentive to use such a poor data structure. This blockchain is somewhat interesting, because it is a distributed ledger of transactions. Each block contains multiple transactions. This blockchain is massively duplicated across network nodes, and it is shared using peer-to-peer file transfer protocol, exactly like your kids do with, music or movies, defeating any copyright system. The blockchain is updated by peculiar nodes known as miners, which appends new block of transaction in this append-only data structure. Now, these miners, in some way, are a distributed back office. Well, let's try to be more precise. All network nodes, not just miner, perform transaction validation and clearing. Okay, I think we have a financial audience. I do not have to explain what clearing is. But miners perform the additional work required for settlement. Now, how did you reach consensus on transaction history? Well, this question is not as dummy as it looks, because I'll tell you, in distributed network with faulty or malicious nodes, to reach consensus is a very hard problem. It's a positive result in computer science that in a computer network, when one or more nodes are malicious or faulty, consensus cannot be reached. Okay? So this is known as Byzantine general problem. So how Satoshi Nakamoto, the Bitcoin inventors, reach consensus on a distributed network? Well, because it injects a huge amount of economic incentive for the mining nodes to be honest. So he solved a computer science problem with an injection of game theory, okay? And that's why most people have an hard time into understanding Bitcoin and blockchain, because as you see, we have cryptography. Everybody has told you about the hashing and private public key. We have some data structure. We have computer science problem. We have networking, but we also have game theory, okay? So Bitcoin is something that it's not supposed to fly, but still it's flying because it's this mix of very peculiar ingredients. So miners are compensated for their proof of work using seigniorage revenues with the issuance of new Bitcoin. So this is another key ingredient, because when they tell you blockchain transactions are free, blockchain transactions are cheap, they are not. I mean, you can use different metrics to measure that, but roughly speaking, every Bitcoin transaction costs between $3 and $10. Wow, huge amount. Okay, why it is free or almost free for the end user? Just because seigniorage revenues are used to cover for the network cost. Okay, so think twice when you look at blockchain, you know, as a cheap way of obtaining something, because it is not cheap at all. Now, blockchain without Bitcoin, does this make sense? Of course, my answer is not, because if you don't have Bitcoin, you have no asset available to reward miners. And so you will need, instead of miner, appointed validator officials. But now, if you have appointed validator officials, why should they use a blockchain, a subpar data structure, instead of using databases? This is a question that mostly go unanswered. And you can try to ask the speaker which will follow me about this question. I'll tell you that all existing blockchains are based on native digital token, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, okay? There is no blockchain in production which is not based on a digital token, okay? This is fact, not opinion. Now, this kind of simple fact, if you tell them, like I'm telling now or I told in my Finextra interview, I can tell you they can reach a huge audience. This video interview on Finextra is their most viewed video for 2016, you know? Just saying that blockchain, needs a native digital asset. But so, if we have tried to dispel some myth about blockchain without Bitcoin, what is Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is exactly the native digital asset tracked by the first and most relevant so far blockchain. It exists only as a scriptural asset, that is a validated transaction recorded on the blockchain. And it is a bearer instrument, you know? If you lose your private key, nobody can recover that Bitcoin for you. What makes Bitcoin special is that it's scarce in digital realm as nothing else before. Now, we don't have enough time, but I will please urge you to have a moment of, deep thinking about this fact. It's a scarce asset in digital realm as nothing else before, okay? This means that it can be transferred, but not duplicated. Now, if I've been good enough at conveying how exceptional this is, you might have realized that Bitcoin is digital gold. This is the brilliant, groundbreaking achievement by Satoshi Nakamoto. It is surely not the blockchain data structure, I'll tell you. Now, let's try to do a quick comparison between gold, physical gold, and digital gold, as in Bitcoin. I mean, gold has been adopted without being centrally planned. I mean, all civilizations around the world have adopted Bitcoin without central banks suggesting them to do this, you know? No planning at all. For centuries, gold has been the most successful form of money And Bitcoin is so far the most successful form of cryptocurrency. Gold has bootstrapped all monetary system we know of, and again, Bitcoin might bootstrap new monetary systems. And even if gold as commodity money has been surpassed by other kind of money, it hasn't become obsolete. And so Bitcoin might be Bitcoin, which is digital gold, so it's more a crypto commodity than a cryptocurrency, might be surpassed by other kind of cryptocurrencies without becoming obsolete. What is interesting is that when people talk about blockchain transactional economy, okay, and let's put this asset or that asset on the blockchain, oh, please, 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 please. Bitcoin is the only blockchain asset. Everything else on the blockchain is somebody's liability. It's not an asset. I mean, Bitcoin doesn't promise you anything else but being Bitcoin. But if I tokenize my car ownership or a security or on a blockchain, that is a liability. If I sell you my car or the token representing my car, you have to please come out in the real analog world and see if my car is there, if it has tires, if its windows are not broken, so on and so forth. So it's very impressive that somebody might think about an multi-digital transactional economy without requiring a native digital asset that can be used for payment and collateral. It doesn't make sense to have only liabilities, debt, IOUs, promises of payment, okay? So a transactional economy, a digital transactional economy, badly needs an asset as Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin does not scale. People have told you that Visa has 60,000 transactions per second as a peak value, can reach that. While Bitcoin, oh poor Bitcoin, just it managed 3 or 7, well actually 3 transactions per second. Now, if Bitcoin is digital gold, if you are with me on that, it must rely on the world's most secure network, and that's why it is low, because every node in the network validates every transaction twice, okay? And that does not scale, of course. That is the best security, hardly scalable. But with gold, you do not need to scale to 1,000 transactions per second. I mean, you do not use gold to buy a newspaper or a cappuccino. Gold is just for, safe haven asset and for huge relevant settlement transaction. Besides, Lightning Network promises millions of transactions per second. Okay, if you want to get deeper into it, I suggest you to following the works of Scaling Bitcoin 3 in Milan next weekend. I'm proud to be the chairman of the local host committee. Tickets are sold out. I'm sorry for that, but you can watch the streams. Now, blockchain without Bitcoin? No way, please. Blockchain beyond Bitcoin? Yes, probably, maybe. I do remember in 1992 using the email. It was clear to me that was a killer internet application. Now, if you told me in 1992 about Google, Facebook, Amazon, the fact that I would have been buying my music and books in a liquid format, I would have been organizing my weekend on a digital club, or that I could have asked, human language question to a PC, to my desktop, asking for a sensible response. Well, I would have been skeptical, but I was sure at that time that email was the killer internet app. So I'll tell you, these days, Bitcoin is the killer blockchain app. And more ambitious app will be surely built on blockchain, but they have not been really imagined yet, and they will need a native digital asset, okay? So one application which is possible right now about blockchain technology is stamping and notarization. You have been slightly introduced before, maybe not, to the idea of hashing. A generic data file can be hashed, and let's keep on technical details, in order to produce a short, unique identifier which is equivalent to the digital fingerprint of that data file, okay? The digital fingerprint is unique for a given data file. You cannot reconstruct the data file from its digital fingerprint. But what is useful about this digital fingerprint? The fact that you can associate this fingerprint to a Bitcoin transaction, the amount of this transaction is completely irrelevant, and ins register this hash value, this digital fingerprint of your data file on the blockchain. Now, the blockchain immutability, and that is relevant, please tell Accenture that editable blockchain, they're called databases. I mean, we do not need to reinvent the wheel. Blockchain immutability provides non-repudiable timestamp, which can prove the existence of that data file in that specific status at that given moment in time, okay? And so this generic process is even undergoing some standardization, and so broker-dealer could use it to satisfy regulatory prescription. If you will want to read the journal response that I submitted with colleagues from Politecnico di Milano to the European Security Market Authority on DLT for security market, you will read that we were almost contrarian on any possible proposed DLT utilization in security market, but timestamping and notarization. Another application of blockchain technology is the so-called anchoring, a new security paradigm. Because Bitcoin blockchain network security, we already say that it's preserved by computational power, which is unparalleled in human history. If you think about Bitcoin network, that is much more powerful than any military or financial network. Now, any other transactional network can tap into this security through anchoring. Anchoring is the periodic timestamping of a network status. Let's say that your network status, it's, as it often happens to be, just a database of a transactional network. Well, you can take the digital fingerprint and timestamping this on the blockchain, as I said before. But in this case, you will be like anchoring your transactional network to the security of Bitcoin transactional network. So in a way, you might look ahead and see that Bitcoin miners might become the global, outsourced, decentralized security of the future, okay? Which is quite new. I mean, I empathize if you feel uncomfortable about this, but the best security in the world, looking forward ahead, might not be the in-house security, but might be much better. You might be much better with outsourcing your security to Bitcoin miners. So, are there other blockchain use cases? Not that I know of, okay? Any other blockchain application, well, they're just cryptographic proofs and private public key digital IDs, which are perfectly fine, I'll tell you. Most of them are promising. I think one of the fallout of the Bitcoin nuclear explosion is the popularization of applied cryptography, and I'm happy that many people are finally getting it and using it, but these are not really blockchain application, okay? So every time somebody proposes you to have a blockchain application, there are questions to be answered, you know, to dispel the hype. Can it be achieved with the database? Because if it can be achieved with the database, please use superior technology compared to very costly, inefficient technology like blockchain. What kind of consensus is required? Because if you're looking for distributed consensus, you know, the one which Nakamoto achieved using the seigniorage revenue as game theory incentive for the mining nodes, to be honest, well, in that case, blockchain is the right answer. But if you're looking for bilateral or, you know, the plain vanilla financial centralized consensus, do not look for blockchain, please. Okay, what kind of security do you require? Because if your security is preventive, well, blockchain is good. I mean, the cryptographic machinery enforce that no invalid transaction can be approved. Okay, so invalid transactions are technically unfeasible. So it's fantastic. But if you need detective security, like figuring out what has been going on, well, blockchain these days is transparent, but I can tell you that is a bug, not a feature. Don't count on that. Looking forward ahead. And especially if the kind of consensus you need is corrective, like having a central governance, able to revert, cancel, remove, forbid a given type of transaction, well, now you will be better off with Accenture editable blockchain, which, as I told you, they're called databases. Blockchain, by the way, is absolutely not suited for storing large amount of data. Okay, since it is replicated on every network node, okay, please do not believe that network nodes are gonna duplicate terabytes of your data for free, okay? So do not be naive. You can anchor your database, you can timestamp your database, you can anchor your transactional network using the Bitcoin blockchain, but you have to be parsimonious. You have to do that through the use of hashing, digital fingerprints, no more than that, okay? So, I mean, I hope I made this point clear. Blockchain without Bitcoin, without native digital asset does not work. But, I mean, most smart people do get this. As a matter of fact, 2014, it was Bitcoin. 2015, The Economist covered was blockchain technology. This day, all of you know that it's distributed ledger technology. Okay, what is distributed ledger technology? I don't know, because it does not exist yet. But everybody's talking about, and I'm pretty confident we will learn a lot in this today. But again, for a skeptical view, please look at our response to the European Security Market Authority. Because I'm pretty confident that next year we will be back to databases on cryptographic steroids, and I mean, the applied cryptography, which has been popularized by Bitcoin, will be used in database procedure, which is fine. If anybody can get me in touch with Oracle, I would love to talk with them why they are the only one not getting that they are in pole position on this distributed ledger technology stuff. I mean, 2018, I forecast a return to Bitcoin. I mean, it will take a while to understand it, but people will get it. I mean, the number of transactions double every year. Bitcoin was worth $1 in March 2011, $600 today. I mean, $600 in 5 years, 7 years? Well, I don't know. Well, it might take some more for the world at large to get it, but I can tell you, everybody will get it. Okay, and so it's not me, but it's Andreas Antonopoulos to say that most of blockchain stuff being sold to banks is unsecured snake oil. Okay, let's take a look at R3. Okay, this consortium, originally it was stood as a project intended to bring blockchain to finance. So that is the way it has been sold. But it turned out that they are not developing a blockchain because they're smart. They did realize that blockchain without native digital asset cannot work. So they are building a distributed ledger platform. So if you're looking to understand what a distributed ledger platform might be, well, read their documents. I mean, they have a white paper, and hopefully they say a technical white paper coming, so we might read and understand what they mean. To me, it looks like a revamped Swift secure messaging protocol on cryptographic proof and bilateral ledger steroids. So evolutionary to say the best. I mean, evolutionary is the best thing I can say about, okay? But so why finance is fascinated with Bitcoin? Sorry, with blockchain, okay? Bitcoin is a pariah, is an outcast. Because blockchain transactions are immediately validated and cleared, and then settled shortly thereafter, usually in 10, let's say 60 minutes, automatically without the central counterparty. Now, what is the only financial transaction you know of where clearing, validation of the transaction, the clearing and the settlement happen at the same time? Is there anyone able to answer that? Come on, don't be shy. Cash. The cash transaction is the only transaction which is cleared and settled automatically without a central counterparty or central authority. Now, that is appealing, because everybody else in finance is T+2, T+3, or, if you try some cross-border payment, might not work at all. So this is a feature. I'm sorry, this is not a bug. We want settlement to happen at T+2 because we have elected consensus by reconciliation. I mean, we have financial transaction that takes milliseconds to execute and days to clear and settle. This is not a technological problem at all. This is because we want to reconcile multiple independent ledgers for a checks and balance system that allow for prescription, correction, and restriction. We do not want instant settlement, okay? Because instant settlement will reduce liquidity, making leverage, short selling, and netting almost impossible. Okay, now if you ask me, I would love instant settlement. I would love to make leverage, short selling impossible, okay? But my management doesn't like the idea. And instant settlement for payment, yes, that will be feasible, but it has cost. Who's going to pay for those costs? I mean, we transfer data with zero marginal cost, okay? If you give me your mobile number, it will be my pleasure to send you the movie of my daughter's birthday party, which has happened last weekend. And I can do this for free, or at least for zero marginal cost. Now, to move the few bytes of my home wealth, I do pay a fee. I can do that Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Of course, it is laughable. I mean, 10 years down the road, we will be looking back and say, oh, how was that possible? But who's going to provide the world? And my question is not if, but who and when is going to provide to the world an instant settlement network for payments? I don't know. Anyway, I'm not sure the financial world is fighting for that for real. Okay? And in any case, please, please, please note that cash on the ledger is imperative for delivery versus payment. I mean, I've read about a lot of, very interesting proof of concept on trade finance. Now, they turn out to be, digital signing of a PDF. That is. And then the journalist asks, oh, but the payment happened on the ledger? Oh, no, because we do not have cash on the ledger. We only have Bitcoin on the ledger, Euros, dollars, sterling, pound. It's not on the ledger yet. Now, cash on the ledger is imperative. Let's do it. But, I mean, I'm glad you have Mike Carney, Bank of England governor, who said for me, like, if we reduce the friction for people to access central bank money, because you know that the only central bank money you have are the banknotes and the coins, everything else is commercial bank money, and if you show up at your bank and ask for all your wealth in cash, they do not give that to you. I don't know if you have ever realized that, okay? So you are not allowed central bank money, but if central bank money was available to you, nobody will use retail bank for deposit and savings. Okay, so this is a huge systemic risk. So central banks are not going to provide cash on the ledger anytime soon. The IMF, I mean, they have been sponsoring special drawing rights since 1917 as a reserve asset, synthetic reserve asset. They could do that. Let's imagine an IMF sponsor Bitcoin, okay? But the same reason that is preventing special drawing rights to catch on, which is, the US dollar do not like to lose its predominance as a reserve asset, might stop this. So a free instantaneous peer-to-peer network is a great opportunity for retail bank. This will be probably worth a consortium. Now, another myth is the idea of the single shared data set, okay? If we had a single data source, we could avoid reconciliation. Wow, a huge operational improvement. But without a central governing node, how will we manage priorities between conflicting updates? So we're back to which consensus model? And if you read, I mean, you find very little evidence of blockchain or distributed ledger technologist proponents about which kind of consensus model they are going to implement for real. Bilateral consensus, as somebody say, really? I mean, me and you, we just digitally sign a PDF? That is the innovation? Come on, please. Central governance. Okay, let's assume that somebody will manage, any possible conflict. So we're back to database admins. Doesn't look that innovative to me. Last but not least, what if the single authoritative data source is hacked? If it is the only authoritative data source, we cannot use any other reference to fix it or to restore it to a previous unhacked state, okay? I mean, ask people of the DAO for their improved automation and smart contract. I mean, DAO was the main Ethereum project. It raised more than 160 million as leaderless venture capital, okay? Code is low. They said in their own documentation that the terms of the DAO are set forth in smart contract code. Nothing may modify or add any additional obligation or guarantees beyond those set forth in the DAO's code. Now, you know what happened? That based on the self-executing nature of the code, an agent diverted more than 50 millions from the DAO to his own child startup. And the DAO and the Ethereum team, which well, of course, this will not be a theft. I hope it is clear to you that if code is low and this guy was just using a feature of the code, that was not a theft, that was a feature. But the Ethereum team felt like, you know, completely changing the Ethereum platform to revert that transaction. And as a result, the Ethereum has forked into two networks which are incompatible between them. So the takeaway is beware extreme automation, okay? It's not easy. It's not easy. So conclusion, blockchain needs a native digital asset as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is digital gold and can be as relevant as physical gold for the history of money, finance, and civilization. Bitcoin can scale. Timestamping and anchoring are promising applications. Unrealistic expectations rise from distributed ledger, especially because they do not exist yet. Instant settlement, cash on the ledger, shared dataset, and improved automation are not easy to obtain. Hardly disruptive, DLT, despicable ledger technologies, might be evolutionary database technology. And well, you might read my next paper, which is going to be published in a couple of weeks on SSRN about Bitcoin, blockchain, and distributed ledger technology. But you had a preview of this today. Thank you very much for your attention.
What are your thoughts about the Ethereum protocol?
Ethereum protocol? The answer in line with my presentation will be just I don't mind. I mean, I see familiar faces in the audience, and I've been training those faces about Bitcoin and blockchain technology. And the complaint they had, I mean, it was a 12 days course, 12 days. Okay, around the 7th or 8th days, they say, "Oh, you're a Bitcoin maximalist. You should pay attention to Ethereum. We are interested into Ethereum." So I invited a couple of knowledgeable guys about Ethereum. They showed up, and you know, it was the day after the DAO hack. And so my comments was, "I told you it was not relevant." Well, I mean, experiments. This is a nice word. I mean, we are learning a lot from Ethereum failures, okay? I tweeted 2 days ago that Ethereum is a nerd comedy. If you're geek enough, you can laugh every day. I mean, there are continuous attacks and limits. It's a very interesting concept with huge hubris, huge hubris.
Thanks for the talk. One question is, how is Bitcoin dealing with privacy?
Yeah. The privacy of Bitcoin is very limited. This day, any transaction is pseudonymous. It's not associated to your IDs, but it can be tracked, okay? And it's surely a very weak point. There are means to obfuscate Bitcoin transaction, coin join, something like that, and people are working on better privacy. I love to distinguish between fact and opinion. Many things I've said are facts. What I'm saying now is an opinion. I think that the Bitcoin lack of privacy is a bug, not a feature. Is going to be fixed. Okay, on the chain or you know, on a side chain. But definitely, I mean, if you have been following the Tim Cook iOS issue with FBI requesting, you know, a cryptographic backdoor into the iOS operating system. Apple didn't provide that because in the digital world, if you provide a backdoor, that backdoor will be used today by FBI, tomorrow Russian secret services, tomorrow next by my wife to control on me, to spy on me. Now, if you think about the financial transaction as being a subset of our communication, in the digital world, they must be obfuscated to everyone, or public to everyone. So I think that there will be some relevant development on this. Last but not least, I didn't touch on monetary issue, but for Bitcoin to be fungible, you need not to be able to track its history. It's like an atom of gold might have been involved into mass murder, might have been involved into very bad situation, criminal activities, but when you have it in your hand, it's just an atom of gold. It's just an ounce of gold, and it's worth because it's worth. So it will be fixed, in my opinion.
Sir, I have a couple questions for you.
A couple, wow.
Well, I just want to know if you're aware of this. Are you aware that the United States just signed a bill in Congress on the blockchain last week?
I've read something about that, yes.
Are you aware that the European Union signed a bill about blockchain?
Not really on this one.
you
I know
aware
there
that
is
they
some
do
work,
have
but they
a
didn't sign a bill.
regulation?
No, they
with
didn't sign a
guidelines?
regulation yet. They're
They're
talking
in the
about
process.
regulation.
Right. You
I'm
know that
involved about that.
France and Germany,
Yeah.
they talked about that.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to look at this, you got to look at this from a global perspective, and you got to look at this from a banker's perspective. The controllers of the world want to control everything and bring people online who weren't available to be online, undeveloped countries. Okay, you've made some statements, and I agree. You're a professor. I respect what you're saying. I do a lot of research myself. I don't agree with anything you're saying, but out of due respect, I appreciate what you're saying, because we need to hear the other viewpoint. The whole point of this is to bring people online and to reduce costs. And the consensus by the global people, the free-thinking people, is what makes the blockchain so advantageous. So, I mean, it's cheaper than doing transactions. I mean, you are aware that by 2020, all of the banks will save about $220 million a year in transaction costs by doing it through the blockchain.
Oh, this is a claim, not a fact. You have to prove it. I will be glad if you prove it. Let me say just one thing, because we are bordering on politics, not a technical discussion here. But I'll try to stick to fact. Email was not invented by postal office, okay? And in general, internet has not been invented by telcos. And both email and internet didn't have a government supervision. Now, do you think that the next peer-to-peer instantaneous payment network is going to be designed by banks and government? You might. I don't. That's it. We'll see. It's like we do not really have to discuss it here. Let's meet 2 years down the road or in 2020. See you down the road, and let's see who was right and who was wrong.